welcome everybody to the gaming reality show. The more I say this name, the more I hate it, but it's all right. We have Pelham, who is my co-host, and with our guest, DeathsProxy. If you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, Pelham, community manager and founder of Argent Gaming, Australian and Kiwi gaming community, fairly large, and our celebrity guest.
Hello, DeathsProxy, and I'm one of those
Argent.
trash YouTubers that often get lots of views.
Nah, you've gotten some pretty good videos on what's it called, Ashes of Creation. Some upcoming. I've never heard of it until now. Like, I only saw your video yesterday. And it's really good.
They're informative.
Oh yeah.
And you seem to have inside information.
For sure.
I talk a lot.
Yeah, all right. So, we're going to get right into it. We've got a few topics to go over. So, Pelham last week couldn't be talking a lot because he was actually eating throughout the entire thing. So that's kind of funny. But
I actually choked on a muffin halfway through, and I'm glad no one noticed.
Oh god. But we're gonna get started right then and there. You can actually start it, Pelham, with the topic.
Alrighty, well, the first topic we're going to talk about is the importance of lore and main story in MMORPGs. Now, it's a good feature, having a story, having a reason to actually be playing the game. But if it's a game that really doesn't have a story and they kind of shoehorn it in the last second, it really makes the game not really fun.
Right. Do you guys have any, we'll start with Proxy because he's actually our guest. Do you have any stories or anything that you really enjoyed, the lore or the story of a game that just really threw you in?
Does it have to be an MMO?
It doesn't have to be an MMO, but whatever, whatever the case, because it's really more about gaming overall, but this topic was more about MMOs. But yeah, if whatever game works for you.
No, I always quite like the lore generally in any Final Fantasy game. I find the Final Fantasy games are always quite rich in lore, no matter which one. Even in the MMOs, were pretty spot on lore-wise. And it's one of those things that does get you quite involved in the game, but you don't necessarily. I don't think you actually need a lore to carry on from that. You need like a good background lore for a game, but you don't necessarily need a lore that to be constantly shoved in your face. I mean, players can create their own stories. I always like that about MMOs, where the lore would set up the world for you, but then you would carry on your own sort of kind of lore, with your own stories and your own experiences through the game,
Yeah, that is definitely correct. Making your own story does help. You definitely need to have that background, like at least background lore to an extent. Where, like World of Warcraft, for example, they have the background story, Horde versus Alliance versus Demons.
Mm-hmm.
But the player is considered the hero. They help out. You're actually recognized as a hero depending on the quest you do as well, which is kind of nice. And then you get other games which have next to no story, or is just sort of lost in the flurry of questing.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel right.
Well, I don't know. There's been some games that are just coming out that are really diving into that whole Dungeons and Dragons kind of DM sort of thing. I know this game just got recently canceled, I think, Revival, and there was one more. I can't even think of the name, but I think it's Chronicles of Illyria. Chronicles of Illyria, where it like has this DM that actually speaks over your adventures and stuff, and so you actually create the story and the lore on top of what's already placed down. I think that's pretty cool. But Pelham, do you have anything like any games that like really drew you in because of the storyline or the lore or whatever?
Final Fantasy XIV is probably one of the bigger ones. It's got a pretty good story. It does get lackluster at certain parts of the game, but with the new expansions and everything that come out, they bring in quite a bit of lore, quite a bit of stories, and it sort of draws you in. And because you're this super cool warrior of light, people look to you as the hero to try and save the world. And some of the stories actually almost comparable to the single player RPGs in the fact that there's twists, people die. I won't mention characters and spoilers, but people will die or possibly lose arms, which furthers the story even more, which you actually grow a sort of connected to the NPCs and the other story-based characters that you're playing with, and that really draws people in.
Right. I don't know. For me, what was the? I think maybe it was the Secret World. The Secret World. I just loved the storyline about it. I mean, I didn't really enjoy the game as much because the combat was just a big no-no for me. It was really, really clunky, but the storyline was fantastic. Just, I have this big, I guess, fascination for like Once Upon a Time, which is a show, or like Grimm, or Van Helsing, any of those things, and like the fact like in the Secret World, like it's all together, like everything that you've heard, every myth, Illuminati and all that is real in in the game, and so they kind of tied in one after another, and I think the story is just, like the writing and the direction of the story was really fantastic. But I definitely think it drew me in more into the game and made me more interested into the game rather than going in, pressing FFF spam, and just ignoring absolutely the entire story.
Well, yeah, the Secret World was definitely good, especially the fact that they had their own browser and had websites set up with all this extra information for you to help solve quests that were just puzzles that you'd have to look this stuff up because normal people would not get half of the references or even being able to look up runes.
Definitely not. No, it was really, really confusing, and I really enjoy the browser. That's I find that in terms of in games like recruitment and like guilds, like the guilds recruit like crazy. That's one of the best systems because you can create your own HTML kind of little web page to display to everyone. So I thought that was really cool, but that's a little off topic. But yeah, definitely that's probably one of the games that really, really threw me in because of its lore or story, really.
Yeah, it's strange, and then you get games that really have no story whatsoever, and they kind of just throw you into a world and you're killing these enemies that are supposedly evil creatures or whatnot, but you have no idea why they're evil. You're
Yeah.
just sort of jumping into the world, senselessly killing all these just random mobs for no reason.
Yeah,
You need something.
the thing I find that's the biggest issue, and I think Proxy can agree with me with this, even you, Pelham, with the most recent MMO, is a lot of MMOs have a really great story. Like it's really, really nicely laid out, and the lore is great. But when they do it into the game itself, what they do is, let's say the quest line is they have like separate quest lines. So the quest line for the main story should be the story, but instead they start throwing in little things here and there that which makes it absolutely boring, and then people just start ignoring the rest of the story. So they can pay attention for like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, if that, to the actual story, but then the main quest line is just absolutely garbage because it has nothing to do with the actual story. It's just like kill 5 monsters over here for the quest of blah blah blah. I'm not sure if you guys agree with me.
I kind of
Yeah,
do.
Revelation was a pretty big one of that.
Yeah.
Locking the story behind like a level 39 cap, for example, and the story would pretty much stop at like level 32. So you had 7 levels of just random other shit to go and grind. You kind of forget what you're even doing in the story, or even where it is half the time.
Yeah, and it's a good story too. Sorry, go ahead.
As I say, Black Desert was kind of the same as well. With Black Desert, you kind of start off, you have a story, but you don't really pay attention to it. You're just doing it because it has rewards. You're going through each stage, and every stage, and basically you only complete the storyline because you have to, because it forces you to level up at one point.
Yeah.
Not because you're actually enjoying it. And even to this day, after playing Black Desert for 6 months, I have no idea what the storyline was actually about in general.
I'm pretty sure it was based on the Black Spirit getting his teeth.
Oh no.
Something to do with the Black Spirit. What they actually did, I have no idea.
Yeah, and that's one. I find in our previous podcast, our last week at least, we talked about the Asian MMO market and stuff like that, and I find that actually happens quite a bit on the whole, what do you call it, imported games from other countries, because you get translations that are absolutely not the same, because in one language, it could have a certain inflection in one word, or it could be a complete funny thing on there. But for us, like, I find it's really a really dumbed down version. And a lot of the stories that we get, like, Revelation, Black Desert, Terra, a lot of the games that are from Korea or from Japan or whatever the case are just dumbed down versions of their own, so we don't really get it. And then when we do, it's kind of like meh, because they still add more spam of quests that we don't really necessarily need. They could add it as a side quest.
I think on that it depends on how the game's actually translated. Like if there's actual people that speak both languages translating the game,
Yeah.
it usually turns out a bit better. But if you get some cheap publisher that pretty much Google translates 3/4 of the subtitles of the game, there's going to be translation issues out the arse. Like it can't be helped.
Yeah, so I don't know. Has there ever been a game where you guys are really into the story, but then like the translation really fucks it up for you, whether it's really early in or beta or whatever, or already late in the game, like it's been 2 years and the game has come out, but you're just like, what the fuck does this mean?
I don't
I
know.
haven't dealt with it.
There's been some games where the translation has actually made it more fun, just because the translations are so bad.
Yeah.
And if you remember,
It's
like any of
definitely
the old school like Zero Wing games, where like your base belongs to us and things like that, absolute classics because of their translation errors.
Mm-hmm. What
it
about you,
definitely
Bill?
adds an element of fun. I haven't really played anything long enough that was extremely badly translated,
Yeah.
long enough to really sort of have it affect me diversely. And most of the time, the backstory has taken a seat in those games, like Age of Wushu, for example. I don't even know what the whole premise of the game was. I just did Tai Chi and someone owes me steam buns. That's pretty much the whole point of the game.
Oh, dude, this is like the. I think we've talked about Age of Ushu a few times now, and it's just funny. Like, you have quite the most interesting stories for them. Um, I have so many issues with Age of Ushu, but yeah, this, like, it was also with Blade and Soul, and like the most latest one, Revelation. What's another Chinese or Korean MMO that's been out a little bit? Even like the beginning of Terra, like when I was getting into the story, it was kind of cool, but there were so many like mistranslated things, or it was completely in a different like language, like not even like in the originating language that I was in, a completely different language. So for example, Revelation, I know they're like, my.com is like mail.ru, so it's a Russian company, so they would have English, Russian, um, Chinese, and Wingding as their language, so you wouldn't even understand what's going on. So I know with Blade and Soul it was the same thing. It was also like some things were in Korean and some things were in English, and you would have to really restart the entire game at this point right now in order to kind of get a better glance of the entire story. It really sucks.
Yeah, that was definitely the thing in Revelation when, you open the guild menu and some of it's in Chinese, some of it's in Russian, some of it's in English. That was an interesting thing to learn how to do.
Right?
Currently, Asta Online, giving it a plug because no one seems to be playing it, free on Steam, by the way.
Yeah, I
It
heard
was a
that there's
game.
some translation issues too with that.
Yeah, well, it was out in Asia about a year ago. It shut down. I'm going to gather because no one played it. It feels like Vanilla WoW. The translation though is subpar. Like the amount of times you'll have to kill X for a quest and they're not called that, or they'll ask you to go to this location. This location doesn't exist because it's completely different language. It's interesting, but the game is good.
I've, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of had a bit of a. I was tempted to go ahead and download it just to play with you, but I don't know, man. It looks so bad. But I mean, if the translation's all right, then that's cool. But you know, with the main story, if there is one, I don't know how Asta works. Have you understood it? Do you find that you're more interested in the game because of the story, or do you really not give a shit about it whatsoever?
To be honest, I've pretty much been spamming F on everything. Not so much because of translation issues, just because it feels like Vanilla WoW. I'm not aware of any back lore. It's just fun to play.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I find myself doing that as well. I mean, just kind of ignoring the absolute entirety of the story, just kind of spamming going forward because you really just I know when games just come out, for example, you really want to go and run, like rush. You know, those 24 hours, like the most important thing, and you got to run, and you're grinding, and you're trying to get your load. So you're kind of ignoring absolutely everything. Um, I know one of like you're a hardcore player, Proxy. So
Hmm.
have you done that in the past? Like you're like fuck this entire story. I'm just
I
going
do
straight
that
for it.
in most games, honestly. Like I usually go back and look at lore if it's that interesting, but usually the lore of the game is what sells me on the
Hmm.
game rather than what I continually play for, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. I like the theme of the world intact. EVE Online is a perfect example of that. I played EVE Online a long, long time, and the whole background of the game, the whole setting of the game really sold me the game, but the actual gameplay itself, all the stories, all the interactions with other people are real stories. They're not part of the lore. They're absolutely 100% real things. I don't know if you heard the latest battle, the latest big battle in Eve, but it was basically a battle over anime. That it was banned from one of the big alliance's discords, and they basically broke up into two sections, had a big conflict because the anime was banned. So a lot of things in Eve are always real stories, and I always like the real stories are sometimes more important than the actual game's lore itself. The drama between guilds and alliances within the games is more important, I would say, than the lore in that aspect.
But is that because there's a lack of lore in the game, so they
No, I
have to
mean
make their own
Eve
by
Eve
having
has
infights?
Eve has hundreds of dialogues, text, and lore, and they even have a newsreel that artificially circulates new lore all the time. People having been promoted or demoted in the various sections of the Eve's government, which don't exist, but they put it in newsreels and things, which is quite interesting to read if you like to.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. I haven't played it for a long time, and yeah, it's many years.
So a little more on topic. With I know like there's some games that are really trying to get into the main story and lore, and even hiding it at this point in time, so people can get really into it and start like doing some theory crafting. And there's a game that I'm plugging right now. I mean, Ashes of Creation, which I'm sure a lot of people are super excited for. Uh, is aiming to do that by having a quest line that's 100% storyline and people don't have to like fucking do completely redundant things that have nothing to do with the story. I don't know if you guys are excited about that or you're just like, I'm just gonna spam F and ignore it anyways and just level up as fast as possible.
Oh, they'll definitely. The lore will definitely be good, especially with how much time and effort they're spending on creating the background, the lore, why we left the planet and coming back to it,
Yeah.
and all that. But that also depends on games if they're going to put effort into that lore beforehand. Like Ashes, for example, they've been giving little tidbits, which is just enough for people to sort of start theory crafting, but there's not enough solid information to work out anything. And then you get games like Star Wars: The Old Republic, where you've got the entire Star Wars universe to deal with. So there's a lot of lore already existing. So that also draws people in. So it's really, if you make your own lore, it's yeah, you have to do it well. You can't just half-ass it with a couple of funny books every now and then. There needs to be solid lore.
Yeah. And what about you, Proxy?
In regards to Ashes, with I'm gonna assume their background lore is gonna be pretty good, pretty interesting. But I kind of worry in some ways to the more dynamic side of their questing. Their how it will react to different nodes. How will they keep their quests from feeling hollow if they're dynamically created? Procedurally generated almost.
Hmm.
How would you make them feel real and fit in with the story if they are generated in that sense?
Yeah. And I think like Ember Black is saying, creating lore from scratch is extremely hard and tedious and it's ridiculous. So it's really interesting how much work they're putting into it, and it's not just that game. I'm still thinking of the title of that one game, and it's driving me insane. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a revival. Like it's actually driving me insane, to be honest.
Sorry, I was interacting with the community via text chat, which no one can see.
I think it was, isn't it? It was okay. It was Revival. So Revival's this upcoming game, or I don't know if it still is up. I think it was canceled.
No, it was cancelled. There was a
Was it
fraud.
canceled?
Yeah, there was an issue with, I can't remember. I think it was something that the developers were making it, but there was an off company that was organizing things, and something went down between them. I can't quite remember, and basically then ended up with half the company being liquidated
Oh,
and people
jeez.
not getting refunds.
That sounds fun.
But the developers behind it were still are trying to reinvigorate the project still, I believe, but I'm not sure how they're going to do that.
Yeah, but in terms of that game specifically, which that sucks actually, because I was really kind of looking forward to it. The only thing I didn't like about it was the store because I saw like the amount of money you need to spend. Um,
Yeah, the houses were like
like the
600,
house,
700, $1,000 each. You know,
yeah,
some ridiculous prices.
and you needed to get what was it called, insurance, because sometimes there's like natural world disasters, and if your house blows up, well, that's you're out of money. Yeah, but there's a thing called live storytelling that they had. I think was a really cool idea. So it says, in the world of role playing, nothing compares to a live game master's ability to react quickly to a player's activity, or to steer the events. Anyways, going on so forth. It actually had like a live representative on the servers, and they would kind of announce what you were doing and how you were doing it. And I thought that was really really interesting. I'm hoping that more games actually maybe add that, but with a little more zest. I'm not entirely sure, but I think that's just cool, especially for the people that love to play like Dungeons and Dragons and uh, role playing games.
That would be pretty cool, provided the person doing it was actually creative and not just a brick.
Yeah.
There's like everyone's like, the direction we're going today is you can kill 600 of these things. That would be extremely boring.
Yeah,
I think Atria Chronicles was trying to do that as well. They were trying to get people to take on a DM role for a paid amount of money, you know, like an actual job to be a DM.
Yeah, I think that's a cool thing. But
It's a cool idea, but would it really actually work? Would you, could that person, actually create enough content and enough storyline on the fly like that?
yeah,
It would depend on the person, but it also depends on how often they're expected to do it.
Because
Would this
like
be a new job?
if you're playing like Dungeons and Dragons, you have your DM. Even my DM has trouble keeping up with 6 people. With the amount of stuff can we have this weapon? Can we go to the shop? Can you talk like a merchant for 5 seconds? It's a lot of work for one person just managing 6 people. How would they manage with thousands?
I agree. Yeah, I think it'd be.
You'd definitely want to be paid and sort of spend 5 days a week crafting just story and stuff to do in the game.
But
Because
you
you can't
afford to
do
be
it for a
just
couple of
working
hours.
5 days a week? I mean, you have to be dedicated to the people. You couldn't just hand over the job to someone else on the weekend, really, could you?
Well, exactly. But you also can't do it for 2 hours a day and be like, oh yeah, that'll last us for a week.
All right. Well, moving on from that topic, we're going to be talking about how MMOs that are cross-platform have affected the players using consoles. And I know a lot of MMO players are playing console games now. Or how does that work? MMOs can't console MMO what? But yeah, what do you guys think? I'm gonna allow you
That's an
first.
interesting.
Console? So wait, which way? Is the PC MMOs affecting the consoles?
So in some games, I know Pelham's like, yes, I'm excited, but I know in some games, it actually allows you to have your PC. So let's say I'm playing Barbie Adventures Online, MMORPG, on my
Mm-hmm.
PC, but it also works on the Xbox One, on the PS4, and on the I don't know Wii U, and they all interact against one another. So how has it affected them? Is it negative? Is it bad? Is it good? Um, what do you think? I mean, have
I
you
don't
ever
think it
seen this?
affects players using consoles as much as it would affect, I mean, Final Fantasy 14 definitely, it was more affected to the people playing on PCs than they were on consoles, because some of the controls, especially because I only played the version 1, I didn't play the other versions of Final Fantasy 14. A lot of the controls were dumbed down, design-wise for the console. A lot of the combat elements were slowed down for the console. So I'm not sure if the impact is so much the other way. I don't think I've seen any elements so much that would affect console players as much, but I've never been in that position to be, I guess.
Yeah. What about you, Pelham? I know you were excited.
Well, I think as a whole, MMOs on consoles are definitely killing killing the genre. Things like Destiny 1, for example, Grindfest. It was. I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this one, but it was bad. It was just grindy, load time. Pretty much everything was just bad. But it was a console MMO, didn't really affect PC play. Final Fantasy 14, for example, when they introduced PS3 support, graphics got toned down. I'm going to give a shout out to my old guildie, Alash. He always complained about butt sliders every single time he was online. Because between version 1, which was PC only, and version 2, which came out with the PS3 support when they redid the game,
Yeah.
they removed roughly 3/4 of the arse polygons.
Oh, Lord.
Which to normal people, that wouldn't affect you. But it tilted that person a lot. And there's other things, like to sort of make up for the lack of RAM on the PS3, they had to lower inventory space. They also had to introduce a 2.5-second global cooldown between all of the skills just because consoles didn't like it and the lag input between consoles and all that. But we also had quite a few good players that actually were better than the PC players. It's hard to say.
Yeah. To answer the question, I mean, if you have any questions or you want us, you kind of want to interact with us, you can talk on the Twitch chat, or if you're on YouTube, I guess on YouTube comments. But the thing with Destiny is I never really saw it as an MMORPG. I mean, I saw the whole thing it was going for, and I know it was going for an MMOFPS type of thing, but when I hear MMOFPS, I think of PlanetSide 2. Now that was fucking crazy because there was a lot of people and there was, you could see them. But here it's more very limited, I think. Except you have a central hub, so it's kind of like the Vindictus of FPS. I never really enjoy that. I thought it was fun, but you know. But like with MMOs, like I know like Terra just is or has or is going to the consoles, and so is like Skyforge that just recently went on PS4, I believe. Final Fantasy 14 is already on the PS4 and stuff. So, if we're seeing more MMOs nowadays that are, it's being like modernized, like it's going on the consoles like PS4 and the Xbox One. I don't know if that's kind of like the universal thing of PC Master Race, but like, is it really? Because I've played like Final Fantasy 14 and I've played Skyforge on the PS4, and it's really dumbed down. Like Proxy was saying, like your controls are dumbed down because you can't do as much. There's like a shit ton of keys on your keyboard, and sometimes when you have a gaming keyboard or mouse, it's even more. So you can do even more, but on the controller, you're so limited. You have like 10 buttons that you could actually press.
Yeah.
So is it really ruining the MMO kind of genre by introducing it to the console players? I know because they could use keyboards too, but it's not the same thing when you're so limited with the specs that are on a PS4 or an Xbox One even.
Well, they also suffer from other issues. For example, I think it was Final Fantasy 14 again. I believe it was discontinued on the PlayStation 3 because the new expansion is too intense for the old PS3. So everyone is basically who was playing on the PS3 is now forced to get a PS4. And you're forced to upgrade like that. Why not just be on the PC? It's kind of one of those things, being forced to upgrade onto a new console. I think that's a bigger issue that affects and possibly will affect more console players in the future, especially if they have to start upgrading, from PS4 to PS4 Pro just to play their favorite MMO.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. They did mention in an interview that being on a PS4 Pro won't affect your gameplay at all compared to a PS4. They did mention that. They said they'll probably do a patch with slightly better textures, but that's pretty much it. But yeah, it's consoles. They're not so much dragging down the MMO genre, but they're definitely affecting in ways that it may or may not be good in the long run. Sure, they're broadening their horizons, opening up to more casual people that want to sit on their couch and play with a controller because they're lazy and probably prefer better back support than us sitting in PC chairs constantly.
Well, to be fair, I mean, Steam has an option for that. Steam offers the Steam box and the Steam link as well, which you could use through Steam to play MMOs with a controller. I mean, you're not forced to use a console in that regard.
But I'm also seeing that not a lot of MMOs are getting into Steam. Like, it's kind of like they're like backing away. Like, there's a
Yeah,
lot of games that are in Steam now. Like, let's not lie about that. Steam's really successful. It's just I'm seeing a lot of MMOs that are backing away from using Steam and rather using their own launcher and using their own system. I don't know if you.
I think that's more to do with Steam's like terms and conditions and all the background stuff that we don't know too much about, more so than Steam itself. Because I'm sure if there wasn't as much red tape and stuff in behind the scenes, a lot more games would release on Steam just because they'd have access to a much larger player base.
But even then, you can still run the game, even with its custom launcher. You can still run it through Steam Link using the add a game, without it being an official Steam game.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just saying specifically coming from Steam, like, in the Steam market rather than linking it, obviously, because I understand and I've done it before, but it's just not a lot of people have that option, and even then it doesn't. Not a lot of people know how to do it, or they're too lazy, and that's the general consensus when it comes to gamers is they're super fucking lazy. So you're kind of stuck. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's affected them in a good way. I don't know if it's affected them in a bad way. I do think, as Ember Black put it on Twitch, that it broadens the community base, and that's cool. It does bring a lot of more community members to the game itself. My issue is also when they don't actually they're not cross compatible. So like when PC can't talk to like the PS4 or the PC community because they're really segregating, and I know that happens quite a bit. But even then, it's I just feel like it's more dumbed down, and sure people can enjoy it, but I feel like it's becoming a norm now. Like we're seeing people like in upcoming MMOs like Chronicles of Elyria, like Ashes of Creation, Crowfall. I've seen it constantly. It's like, hey, will this be on the PS4? Hey, will this be on the Xbox One? No one asked for Wii U because we all know, but I don't know. That's just my
Yeah,
my concern.
I think as console hardware does get better and better, it probably won't be as much of an issue. But when you have a look at things like the PS3 with Final Fantasy 14, for example, the craptastic hardware in it definitely affected the game. PS4 not so much because the specs are relatively decent. But that also brings things like the Switch, which are definitely not hardware.
Oh yeah, for sure.
What happens when they
Will
bring
tone
out
it down?
an MMO, for example, on the PS4, like, next year, let's say, and then, it turns out that PS4 is keeping things back and they have to release a PS5 to run the same MMO in a better quality, What happens then?
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know, dude. That's the most fucked up version. And we have 3 other topics we should probably get to, and the next one I know is going to be a huge one that a lot of people have different opinions about, especially the RP crowd. Is PvP good or bad to have in MMORPGs? Pelly.
Yeah, this is
I'm getting you
this
to
is
start
this
that
is
one.
this is going to be a good one. Like, there's going to be some shade, some happy people. It's a bit of everything. PvP belongs in MMOs to an extent.
Go on, yeah.
If it's just structured PvP like arenas, battlegrounds, world versus world battlegrounds, like castle wars or node wars, it would be extremely boring just having those as a PvP outlet. Nerds are extremely aggressive by nature, so we always want to kill things. It's just how it is. Sometimes it's other players, sometimes it's a sheep with 17 legs. Open world PvP, it's a good thing. Now, the thing is, punishments for open world PvP is the big thing. Should be punished? Should it be just unlimited, slap your fellow nerd and get away with it? Should there be consequences for killing your fellow players? It's hard to say. I personally feel there should be some level of consequence, but nothing crazy. What are your guys' thoughts?
You go ahead, Proxy.
Well, PvP is a fundamental part to any MMO, and it's not just, killing another player and taking their stuff, or killing another player in some sort of arena. PvP goes anything where you're competing against another player, as far as I'm concerned. As an EVE player, PvP comes in many forms, in like trade and, outbidding people, anything like that, I consider PvP. Whenever I run a guild, I tell people from the start that everything, when you're basically competing with another player, is PvP. Whether it's, harvesting a node before that player or stealing a sheep off them, it's all PvP.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm indifferent about it. I think I've gotten used to it. You know, I started with FPSs, with games, like Call of Duty and Battlefield. Before that, even what was it? GoldenEye. So I've always been used to the whole competitive thing where a player kills a player and there's really never any consequences because you just kind of get used to it. You just get pissed off and you're like, fuck this motherfucker. You get really mad about it. But, I've gotten used to it. And I think in MMOs, once I transitioned into them when I was younger, uh, it was harder for me to understand because I didn't understand the whole RPG situation. I didn't understand how people role played. I didn't understand how it really worked out because I was so used to just running in, rushing, killing people, die, start all over again. It wasn't the same thing, obviously. So, I kind of got used to it. So I'm not entirely sure if it's good or bad to have an MMOs. You know, retrospectively, I mean, it's a lot of people get mad one way or another. You can't really have one without the other. People get pissed off because there is PvP. People get pissed off because there isn't. People get pissed off because PvP has limitations or they don't have limitations, or there's a jail system or there isn't a jail system, and so on and so forth. So I mean, for me at least, I don't really have an issue with it in any way. I think it's fun. I think it's healthy to have people that are competitive. I think it's weird when people like go out of their way to kill you, and then they like stalk you on Facebook, and then they stalk you on social media, and then they get to know your information, then they dox you and share your information online, then they kill you even more, and then they try to kill you on real life. I think that's fucking weird. But and that's happened to me, so that's fucking weird. But it just, like I said, it really just depends on the situation. But I don't mind it either way.
Well, technically, that's still PvP, right?
That in a way, yeah. I mean, they're coming to kill me. It's PvP one way or another. So it is definitely something.
You're definitely doing something right then.
And then they go to jail and suffer some real life penalties.
That's
Yeah,
right.
or people get pissed off when they're on a stream or they get swatted.
Yeah, I mean that.
Shit happens a lot.
I mean, I think that's not so much an issue of PvP, but people not being able to differentiate, the game world with real life. I think that happens way too often. People can't separate, in-game drama and real drama from PvP.
Dude, that's so true. I mean, it it gets to a point where I've seen like I'm usually the guy who just like watches, but then eventually I'll get involved because I kind of want to know more. But like I've seen people like, let's say in a game someone kills someone, then they start trash talking like, oh my god, you're a piece of shit, fuck you, blah 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 blah, and the other person talks back, and then it becomes to the point where that person starts like looking for that person and what other games they've been in. Then they go into their social media, and like I said, they go into like all this shit to find out who they are and trash talk them in real life, and then like make their lives miserable. Like I don't understand how people can not differentiate. I know it's a little off topic, but it kind of goes hand in hand with PvP because a lot of people, not even just PvP, even PvE. I've seen this shit happen in PvE when you like take someone's, I don't know, like you were saying sheep. So there's a group of sheep, and I'm like, fuck this guy. I'm gonna go ahead and steal the sheep and kill them because I need them for my quest. And then he just gets so super pissed off. Like, I think that's just mentality. Just people are fucking weird. I don't know.
They feel entitled, so when you start stealing their shit, they get unhappy about it. But I think there's also other issues underlying there that when they try to attack you outside of the game.
Well, that's an understatement.
Yeah.
It's definitely an understatement.
Yeah. Mother loved them a little too much or not enough, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Norman
Then
Bates.
it comes to the question.
Yeah.
Do you limit PvP? Do you have safe zones? Do you make it so you can kill anyone anywhere? But if a guard sees you, then you get in trouble. Do they make it so the punishment for PvP happens when you first initiate the attack on the other player, or when you actually kill them?
Well, that's the problem too, right? Because if you dumb down the system and you're ruining the vision of the actual game just because people have mental problems and can't differentiate between real life and the game life, what the fuck? You know, why not just leave it
Yeah,
as
like,
it is and just deal with them individually?
yeah. Now here's a perfect example of when you should be punished. Say there's some guy in the distance cutting down a tree that my friend wants to cut down because there's only one tree left in the zone because resources are finite.
Mm-hmm.
If I initiate PvP to get him to stop cutting the tree down, and my friend cuts that tree down, should I be punished for that? Because I didn't technically kill the guy. I just interrupted him cutting down the last tree on the server.
Yeah. I know in a
Uh,
previous. I think you'd actually laugh at it, but go on.
that's the thing. I feel that punishment should happen when you actually kill the other player. Like if you're just sitting there just smacking him every 5 seconds and not actually doing damage just to annoy the shit out of them, that's just a part of being annoying. I like it. I shouldn't lose. I shouldn't lose like karma or corruption or like honor points because I'm annoying someone. That should only happen when you kill someone.
Yeah, I do agree. In Revelation, I won't mention names because LOL, but we had actually Ember Black was there, who was in chat. He and a couple of people were going ahead, and I should actually. Why did I mention names? Anyways, they were trolling this guy, and the guy was killing monsters. He needed to kill 50, whatever alligators, right? He didn't. Now, these the people, the group that was together did not attack the guy. Attacking the alligator. So I'm gonna call the guy Person B. So Person A didn't attack Person B. What he did instead was grab him, so like it would move him out of place, just to be annoying, and have the alligators reset on him because just to be a dick, really. And that guy came to me and came to a shit ton of people and went on forums and just went rage mode because, oh my god, there's trolling, fuck toxic community. Because simply, they were using a skill on him to move him from one place to another to not have his alligators. That's it. He freaked the fuck out. So, like I said, I think it really depends on the mental state of somebody because some people are really fucking weird in MMOs, and I met a lot of fucking people, but they're really weird.
Weird, yeah, it goes hand in hand with MMOs, mate.
Like Jesus. But let's go on to the next probably controversial. I think everything we've said has been controversial, but what is the better payment model for MMORPGs? Free to play, sub, buy to play, prostitute to play? What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, straight up free to play usually means there's a disgusting cash shop somewhere in the background that may or may not be present and thrown in your face every 2 seconds. Like, hey, you need 5 extra inventory slots. Pay $6. It's bound to happen. Most either Asian MMOs that get released in the West, or even Western MMOs that die because they're absolutely shit, usually go the free to play route. Buy to play is not bad. Guild Wars 2, perfect example. It was a pretty fun situation. Buy the game, that's it. Buy the expansions. No sub, no nothing. Cash Shop wasn't terrible. Don't know about now because I haven't played for a while.
Yeah.
They did lack content at the end, possibly because of lack of funding or just because they didn't really think about it.
Yeah.
And then you got sub to play, or with buy to play sort of mixed in, like World of Warcraft. Buy the game, pay a sub. Usually has a stream of content constantly happening because they've got constant revenue. Cash Shop is usually not there, or if it is, it's very, very low key and doesn't affect the game too much. Yeah, there's a few different ways of doing it. I don't think any of them are super correct, but sub is definitely the preferred model for games that are decent.
Yeah. What about
See,
you, Bryce?
I honestly believe it's more to do with what type of game it is. And like games, perfect example of a free-to-play game, which is more about collecting stuff. When it comes to collecting stuff, you're not really winning anything. You're just collecting stuff faster. You're not paying to win, in my opinion. For example, Warframe is a game where it's free to play and you just collect stuff. You collect suits, you progress through the things, but you're not really winning anything if you pay with a credit card. Essentially, you're just collecting stuff faster than the other guy. You're not really winning anything. You're just cutting down the time you invest, but because the end game of that game is just to collect stuff. You know, it's not really to win a competition or a tourney or some sort of guild achievement or win territory of any kind. You are just literally paying to unlock content, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, you get games which are like, you know, EVE Online, which, you know, has a very high paywall to enter some of the combat, you know. So if you start throwing money at it, you can actually pay to lose. You know, you could spend, you know, 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 grand, you know, on this game, and you could just lose everything in seconds, you know. So in that sense, some games are actually paid to lose rather than paid to win if you don't know what you're doing. And then you have games which are buy to play, which work absolutely fine. Guild Wars 1 was one of those games that worked absolutely fine with buy to play, you know. They released an expansion every now and again, worked flawlessly for that kind of game model. And then you have subscription games which are for the games where you want to try and, you know, micromanage that one character's progress, and that's more like games like, you know, World of Warcraft and Ashes of Creation, what's going to coming up, and Final Fantasy 14, where it's all about having that one character and advancing with that one character.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, for me, I mean, I've talked quite a bit about this in the past, but you know, you have buy to play, you have sub to play, you have free to play, you have buy to play with sub to play. So there's quite a few different options. I think the free to play market's been broken. I think it was cool at first. You know, the cash shop was fine at first, and then because of the constant stream of games that have come out with the free to play business model, their cash shop has broken it. So I know I've said this quite a bit, but I think free to play model is a broken one. Like I said, no one trusts them anymore. Subscription based games have a huge amount of following, just based on the outcomes of the games that have been out because of it. Usually, a free to play game will end up killing off its community with pay to win or pay to convenience or pay to advance type of advantages. And subscription usually ensures the longevity of the game and provides a secure niche, in my opinion. But I think, in my opinion, subscription-based games will have a more dedicated fan base and have more belief in the structure of the game and how it's being developed, rather than, you know, coming out with a box that you just buy the game or free to play. So I think, in my opinion, the best business model is subscription based. But at the same time, um, it really just depends on the company, doesn't it? I mean, you can have a sub based game that's absolutely garbage and the market is still garbage. You know, that really depends on the publisher, on the developer, on the investors. So, I don't know. I still go with sub for now.
I think the main difference there is people that play a sub to play the game, they have to pay the sub. It's more of a, they feel like they have to play the game as well. So as long as there's stuff to do in the game, people usually forget that there's even a sub attached to it. But if there's a distinct lack of content and someone's paying $15 a month and they're like, I have to play this game for like 6 hours a day to get my $15 a month worth, and there's nothing in there to do, that's where you run into problems as well. Star Wars, when it first came out, was a prime example of that.
Yeah, you're right.
There was no in-game. After about 6 to 9 months, it ended up going free to play with a pretty horrible looking cash shop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at Final Fantasy 14. You know, it's a sub-based game and it's got a huge community. Um, and that's, like I said, that's depending on the publisher because they've done some good decisions. They've done some weird decisions, but they've made some good decisions too that have made the community, you know, come together and play together. And there's people that will play and completely forgot they paid or are paying monthly. And sometimes they'll cancel, be like, well, you know, I don't want to pay for this month because I'm done. I'm caught up. I'll just wait for the next expansion. And you know there's going to be a next expansion because Final Fantasy 14 has a shit ton of money that's been put into it. So, you know, World of Warcraft, which is, you know, has its own merit. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it started off strong, but it has slowly waned in the content releasing. Like, it's just not as often. Same with Final Fantasy. There's content every patch cycle, which is usually 2 to 3 months. There's usually a couple of dungeons and the next part of a raid tier that unlocks a whole new story, whole new everything.
Yeah.
Most buy-to-play games and free-to-play games, if they do get content updates, they are far and few between.
Yeah, And I mean, there's not really much to talk about this in this particular topic. But if you guys have like, you know, um, do you guys have any games that you played with a business model that you guys currently think that what you've just said in the last 5 minutes? You know, you said you believe in this and this and this. Have there been any games that you just said you like sub that you had a sub game, but it's at once you got into it, you were in love with it, but then it became absolute garbage because how it's being handled, or because the payment model changed, or whatever.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings was definitely one. When that went free to play, the cash grabbiness of that game was pretty terrible. Like to expand your inventory, you had to pay. Get mounts slightly quicker, you had to pay. But if you had a lifetime sub, you always had a lifetime sub, so you didn't have to worry about any of that stuff ever.
Yeah.
I The hardest part is once they transition from sub to free to play, and that ugly cash shop usually rears its head. That's usually not a fun thing. Like Star Wars, for example. Sub was fine. The cash shop now has so many features that you can buy that shouldn't really be in a cash shop, like hiding your helmet, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends on the company, how far they go into the shit show that is a cash shop.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I reckon sub and buy to play and a sub are probably the two better ones for me in most games I've played.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, Lord of the Rings Online. I remember when that came out. That was kind of cool because it has nothing to do with my name, by the way, which is a fucking biggest mystery of all. But yeah, I'm a big fan, obviously. But what about you, Proxy? I mean, have you played a game that has your desired, you know, payment model, but completely fucked up in the end because it changed the payment model or whatever?
I'm not sure they fucked up the end. I think they kind of fucked up in the beginning, but I have to say Darkfall on that one. When Darkfall originally released with their subscription model, it's the only payment method that would work for a game like that. The concept of the game was great, the idea behind it is great, but it's the only subscription would fit that kind of game because of the way it's designed. You couldn't really have a free-to-play model with that kind of full loot, gank everyone, kill anyone wherever you want sort of method, because your items would be lost. Um, and the only way that game would have worked with the subscription. I can't see it working with any other kind of business model. But because the company, wasn't investing that money correctly and it wasn't using it correctly at all, it flopped. Despite using my preferred business model, it just would never be able to sustain itself on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I hope like with games that are coming out, if they stick to a payment model, they stick to it. And I know it also sucks because it's dependent on the community itself. Because if the community, dips in numbers, they also need to recover funds. So sometimes they'll go into, free to play and then start adding cash shop items that are belay, which we talked in the last episode. But there's one particular item and concept that I fucking hate in games, and that leads us into our last topic of the night. RNG. Is it worth it? Is it really worth having RNG in games? I'm not gonna mention Arcade right now, but
I think it goes to the extent of the RNG, what it's involved
if
with.
it's bad, like there's in the RNG system has been so bad in the last recent years. It seems that where loot boxes. Fuck, I hate loot boxes. I just can't stand loot boxes. You have a chance of getting a fucking item. I hate that so much. Like I know in there were games that came out that people were super excited for, and their cash shop system is like, okay, well, have this box. In this box contains 9 dies, $10, 100 hair dies, my life, and 1 mount. Now you end up having to buy 900 of these, spending maybe $1,000 before you get that fucking mount. Now that doesn't mean you have shitty luck. I mean, it does. Let's be real, it does. The RNG Jesus is not with you, but it shouldn't be that way. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that you have to spend so much money in those boxes, and that's why I said I hate loot boxes. I just absolutely detest them. And you also have things where, you have a chance of breaking a piece of gear because you didn't buy this piece of corn in the cash shop, which increases your RNG. What? I don't know, dude. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, it depends on what's in these RNG loot boxes. Like if it's a box of say 10 dyes, say orange dyes, and there's 40 different shades of orange, that's going to be a pain in the ass because you may only want a specific shade. Like it depends on what's in them. If it's something like buy this box, there's like a 5% chance you get a mount. Yeah, that's interesting. Things like dyes, not so much a problem because, well, everyone needs dyes eventually anyway. Things like items, gear, mounts, pretty much anything that people want in a loot box that's RNG, it's usually a cash grabby thing.
Yeah.
There are much better ways of implementing it.
What about you, Prox?
In terms of RNG, I love RNG, but not in the form of loot boxes, that's for sure. When it comes to loot boxes, I believe they should be affected by the same gambling laws as any, gambling generally, because we see you look on, for example, I don't know if this is in the Canada or UK, in the USA or Australia, but in the UK, when something's gambling, they have to actually put the percentage of success now underneath the chances to actually get something. They actually have to list it very visible, and on the scratch card or whatever it is, it has to be listed on your chances of winning, whatever you pay with. And I don't think the payment of anything like that should be in an MMO. I think that anything that is RNG based should be easily obtained in game without any cash shop mechanism behind it or any investment. But in terms of RNG, I actually love RNG in games. It makes it a lot of fun, especially if you look back at like Dungeons and Dragons. You play in Dungeons and Dragons, you roll that natural 1 or you roll that natural 20. Something amazing happens either way. You either try to survive under unrealistic odds, or you something really awesome happens, like you get to meet the god or something. I love RNG, but not so much in the RNG box department. No.
Yeah, no, RNG on its own, I think is cool because you feel good or you feel bad, and I think that's kind of the cool thing about MMORPGs. But what I was referring to was more like, loot boxes or having to pay to increase your RNG, or having to pay even more to increase it even further, or whatever that in that base basically. So I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I agree with you in that sense, but I really hate the whole system. I hate loot boxes. I detest them, and I can't say that enough. And it's mainly because I know a lot of people were like this. Is you get a really rare item that you can get in game, like the rarest item you can get in game. Sometimes they'll put in that in the loot box, and then you have a chance to get it, and so you don't have to farm for it. That's fucking lame. Or you have the best jewels, or you're the best whatever, and you can buy it in the cash shop, and bam, best jewels. I think that's just garbage. I absolutely detest it. I think RNG, if it's done correctly, um, in games, I think it's fantastic. I think it's fun. I think it's innovative. But when it's put into mechanisms that just are obviously handled by greed, it doesn't really strike me nicely.
Yeah, it's like Arcade. Like Arcade is the probably, or Treon specifically, is the worst for doing, where they sell you an RNG box, but then after like a couple of weeks they put the item from the RNG box on the cash shop because you can buy it directly in case you're fed up with the RNG.
And you always get that one guy that'll get it after one RNG box, spends
Oh my
$4,
God, yes.
gets his item, and is like,
Yeah.
fuck yeah, I have this epic two-handed axe. Fuck all of you.
Well, you can't be pissed off at that. I mean, you can be pissed off. You're like, fuck, I wanted that, but it's cool. But I think I still hate RNG boxes, anyways, one in the way or the other. But as long as you don't have to buy like the diamond of Sharala. This item pertains 50% better accuracy with RNG. I don't know. That would increase your chances. I fucking hate that. I think that's garbage.
It depends on like the other side of the spectrum as well, out of the RNG box system and RNG drop thing. Last patch of Final Fantasy 14, for example, they added in the best weapon in the game, potentially. 72 people kill a boss. One person out of those 72 will get a random item level 180 weapon.
Mm-hmm.
It's for a random class, so it may not even be for them, which is also a kick in the pants. And then that item itself has RNG stats again. So technically, it could be the equivalent of like an item level 100 staff or it could be technically an item level 200 staff, depending on the RNG stats that are on the thing. How RNG do you put things like that into it? Like random stats on random items from random bosses? Because the boss itself also had a random chance to spawn.
Oh my god, that's ultimate RNG.
Yeah, like that's the thing. That's not too bad because there's always the chance of getting it. You didn't have to pay.
Yeah, I think it's annoying, but I don't think it's bad.
See, I like RNG from bosses, you know, like, you know, old school vanilla World of Warcraft, you know, going through those dungeons all the time to try and get, you know, X drop from the bosses, like in Strotholm or whatever. That was fun. That was fun. That's fun, enjoyable RNG. And I feel like loot boxes, and especially RNG loot boxes, basically skipping the process of clearing the dungeon, clearing the boss to see what you get, just to get a chest and see what you got from that by paying money, just to skip the whole in-game experience of earning your chance at RNG, rather than you just buying directly the chance to do RNG.
Yeah, then you got the RNG stones that you can stick on gear to make them upgrade slightly more effectively. Black Desert, I'm looking at you for that one.
Oh lord.
Here, you have a 4% chance to upgrade this, but if you use these tiers, that 4% goes to like plus 10.
Yeah, see, I'm not about that life. But I think RNG just kind of fucked me up with Dragon Ball Xenoverse. Dragon Ball Xenoverse. See, I'm very completionist on when it comes to games, and with in the PS4 when Dragon Ball Xenoverse came out, you have these achievements, and I love getting the achievements and getting platinum and finishing it. With this game, however, there is an achievement to get all your special skills and all your super special skills. So to get your special skills, they're usually simple. However, to get some super special skills, you need it to proc. So you need to go to a specific level, do a specific action at a specific time, and if you didn't, you messed it up. And then you had the chance of proccing that boss to go to another phase, and then you had to kill him in a specific way, and then and only then you had a chance to get that skill.
Yeah, that fucked me over with Super Vegeta 2 in Xenoverse 1.
Oh my god. Oh, you know what I'm talking about then, right?
Oh yeah.
You know the Brawly area where you were killing Oh my god, that took me a week. Just that area.
But at least you know there was a chance of getting it. That's the main thing.
I just
It's
get
things like
pissed
the
off
Final
every
Fantasy.
time. Yeah.
When it's got random stats on a random thing that changes to, like, you could, like, imagine if you could get, say, Super Vegeta 2 that gives you more key attack, or Super Vegeta 2 that gave you sweet fuck all. That would drive me nuts. The
That
fact that
would
it's
drive me
the same thing, it's just the random chance of getting it is fine. When they start fucking with the reward, that's where it bothers.
Exactly. But I think that kind of leaves us with us. I don't know, Proxy, if you want to kind of plug yourself in, as you tend to do, you're more than welcome to. Thank you for joining us.
No, I'm good enough. That's fine. Just being on the show is good enough, bro.
Yeah, DeathsProxy is a good, really, really nice YouTuber. Definitely recommend him, especially if you're looking for information for Ashes of Creation, which is an upcoming MMORPG coming in 2009. In the next 20 years, I don't really know.
10-ish.
I almost said number, but I don't really know. In the next 2 or 3 years.
Soon TM.
Yeah, soon TM.
Soon TM.
How the fuck do I respond to that? Yeah, definitely. If you want more information, definitely go check him out on YouTube. Same name as you've seen pop up on OBS or the video you're looking at. Yeah, it's been nice. And if you can't see this or you're looking on YouTube, make sure to subscribe or comment if you have any questions or any topics you want us to discuss in the next week. Because we're going to have some guests every single week. Maybe a director, maybe a producer. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, we managed to get Chris Metzen in to shill his latest Blizzard patch.
Please no. But yeah, it's been nice, and we'll see you next week, guys.
Have fun.